Today, in current events from a Christian perspective, the Burning Man festival goes biblical with fire and flood, and we're here for it. No, seriously, this actually says a lot, I think, about our current cultural status, where we are, where we have been, and in fact, where we need to go. So, without further ado, I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Welcome back to Church Public. Again, I'm your host, as always, Matt Odegaard, and I appreciate you stopping by. Thank you so much. If you're listening on audio, I appreciate that. If you want to see some of the videos and pictures today, you can go to churchpublic.com. And if you like it, subscribe, share, hit all the buttons. If you feel like supporting, churchpublic.com/support. All right, what I actually want to start with today is a little bit of Bible. This is not exactly a one-for-one story, but as soon as I heard/saw this story come up about Burning Man, this is just what I thought about. So I thought we should start with 1 Kings 18 and the story of Elijah. This is a great story. It's a great story of contest between the real, actual God and a false God. I'm going to summarize the story. Please feel free and do go and read 1 Kings 18. Even read the couple chapters leading up to it, the couple chapters after it. It is a great story of who Elijah is, but more than that, it's a great story of who God is, how he provides, how we succeed sometimes as followers, and sometimes we fail, even after success. But anyway, in this story, Elijah says great things like, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal is God, follow him." And that's verse 20. One of my favorite in really all the Old Testament, but especially in 1st and 2nd Kings. So, with the help of God and the providence of God, Elijah sets up this really big battle between the two gods. Again, real God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the true living God, I am that I am, as Moses met him, and Baal, who is a false god. So, Elijah sets up this giant battle between the two gods. Again, I'm going to summarize a bunch of this story for time, but please do go read it. It's a great story. So he sets up this giant battle by building these two altars and letting the false god go first. Now, it also stands to note that in this story, the whole reason that they're up there sacrificing is because it hasn't rained forever. And they're trying to figure out why it hasn't rained. One group of people says, well, we need to sacrifice to our God for it to rain. And Elijah says, essentially, your God isn't real, so we can have this competition, but your God's not going to do anything about it. And it's like, challenge accepted. They're like, okay, it's on, let's do this. So he says, okay, I will give you guys first crack at it. You guys go first. So starting after verse 20, verse 24, 25, verse 26, it says, they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. Baal, answer us, they shouted, but there was no response. No one answered, and they danced around the altar they had made. Then Elijah says, man, and I love this part, verse 27, at noon, Elijah began to taunt them. Shout louder, he said. Surely he is God. Perhaps he's deep in thought or busy or traveling. Now, I have to pause here. Some of the Hebrew, and some of you know this story, but some of the Hebrew, it kind of points to the fact that, hey, maybe he's in the bathroom and he's not available. Like, that's really what the Hebrew says. For those that think God doesn't have a sense of humor, he does. Anyway, so then Elijah goes on taunting them and saying, hey, maybe he's sleeping. Maybe he needs to wake up. Verse 28, so they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until blood flowed. Yikes. Verse 29, midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for the evening sacrifice, but there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. And so what ends up happening is incredible. And I may even leave you on a cliffhanger here. I'll give you a little bit that the God of the Bible, the true and living God, does answer, and he answers in a spectacular way. And I really think you should go read this story. But I just think that part of the story is really interesting because over all of these thousands of years, time can go by, generations can come and go, kingdoms will rise and fall, and yet we're not all that different from where we were right here. This is where we're going as a civilization, or maybe to say it better, this is where we are as a civilization. And the story that we're going to look at today really illustrates this is where we are as a civilization. We've gone back to this pagan gods, these pagan rituals, and apparently we like it. So I figured on the other side of it, we should say, hey, maybe this isn't the best way. Maybe this isn't the way we're supposed to do things. And that's what I want to look at today. So I know you're sitting there going, Matt, please finish the story. Hey, here's the good news. You probably have a Bible somewhere, even maybe within reach of you right now. You could pause this right now, read the rest of 1 Kings 18. It's kind of, I don't know, maybe a quarter or a fifth of the way in the Bible, depending what Bible and translation you have. And you should definitely go check it out because it is a great story with a great ending to that part of it. Then Elijah does some other things, but it just keeps going and going. Anyway, so the story that we're looking at today in our culture, in our time, is about Burning Man. And you probably have seen these images and these things. I mean, it's been all over everywhere, and you've probably heard about it. There was between 70 and 80,000 people who were trapped in the desert at this Burning Man festival because apparently it rained and there was a flash flood, and so they're trapped there in the northwest portion of the Nevada desert over this last weekend, over the last few days. Now, I know you can say that's terrible. Yeah, but we got to figure out like what in the world is going on here. So what I wanted to do is just kind of a little bit of a review of what this is, why it makes a difference in our culture right now, and what we can learn in comparison, because what we do here at Church Public is look at current events from a Christian perspective so that you can know how to go out and live out your faith. Because that's really what this is all about. The Bible has fun stories, though they are true. Culture has interesting events, though they're real and sometimes wacky. But what we need to figure out is, how do you walk out of your front door and live your life and live it in faith in such a way that you live according to the way of Christ? So we try to bring that. I try to bring that for you to the best that I can with Bible and theology. And we're going to look at a little bit of that today. So we're going to look at this Burning Man festival, and not too closely because, truth be told, you don't want to look at this festival too closely. I'll go through some of these pieces fairly quickly and really not show you a lot of what happened because it's gross. By and large, it's just gross. But let's just start at the beginning, apparently, which was in 1986, where a small group of friends gathered to burn a 9-foot-tall statue on the beach in San Francisco. Of course, it was in San Francisco. Each year, more and more people came to the bonfire, and it became crowded enough to call it and they moved it to the Nevada desert. Now, most of this information for me, for you today, I'll cite the sources. It's from a bunch of different websites, but this one happens to be from a website that I was just trying to figure out what in the world is going on. And so just kind of roaming the world. And this one happens to be from therichest.com. I'm not super familiar with that website, but they had a good write-up of the history of Burning Man. And so I read it because apparently I am a glutton for punishment. I guess you're welcome. But hey, you're here with me and we're going to go through this together. So they started on the beaches of San Francisco and moved to the Nevada desert. Now, each year it's held in this city, which apparently they invented, which is Black Rock City, where there are tens of thousands of attendees and they just build the city. They just bring things. And that was the start of it. You were supposed to bring like a hammer and a 2x4 and build whatever it is you needed for this week or weekend. And they would construct gatherings and buildings and all sorts of other things and bring tools and their equipment. Originally, they said nothing is sold at Burning Man apart from coffee and water, and every transaction is bartered or gifted. Now, we'll look at that claim in a minute because that's not exactly what really is going on. Though, by the way, it does say that they sell coffee and water, so why can't you just gift and barter coffee and water? Well, because certain things have value and you need to use your resources to get them. Some would say that's free trade and capitalism, but apparently in this culture, we don't like those things. Let's continue on in the story. For many attendees known as burners, the event's about providing a space for countercultural expression. Countercultural expression. That's a really good phrase that we've got to point out and hang on to. Originally, this started as countercultural expression, but what I want you to think about as we're going through this whole story is, what we're seeing countercultural, or is what we're seeing now just a part of the mainstream culture? Is it really going against the grain of what the whole rest of the world, the whole rest of our culture in America, at least, is doing? Or is it just more of the same? And really the end of the same if you went to the end of the crazy things that we're seeing? It's a good question you should think about. So this is also known, Burning Man, as the hippest party around, apparently famous for its raves and the use of quote unquote controlled substances, as well as other things, which again is why you should not look too closely at this because frankly, it's just gross. Now, in recent years, apparently, this is according to this article at The Richest, longtime burners have resented how the festival's growing popularity has changed the experience. This is important. They cited on Reddit posts about a new class of burner that is celebrities, including billionaires like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. So originally, a bunch of hippies on the beach in San Francisco are burning stuff, and then they move it to the desert and a bunch of more hippies are burning stuff. And now it's a bunch of social media influencers and literal billionaires. In 2006, 14% of the burners listed their income as $100,000 or more. By 2016, that was 27%. And that was, that's almost, 10 years ago now. They also added a 300,000 plus income category that rose from 2013 to 2016, which is when the last that I could find statistics on this, but apparently, and I would guess, it's grown bigger and bigger now. Now, these wealthier burners enjoy exclusive camps known as turnkey camps. This is like the ultimate glamping, if I were you. And according to Mashable, they have luxury amenities, cleaning staff, chefs, etc., etc. And this particular article that I was reading said it wreaks havoc on the environment by chartering flights to get there. So we've got to understand where this is coming from. This whole hippie experience, it was a bunch of hippies on the beach in San Francisco, moved to the desert, and all of a sudden you've got billionaires and celebrities flying their private jets into this place. And it's just one giant rave party with a whole lot of gross nakedness and other illegal substances. So in 2019, the Burning Man CEO, Marianne Goodell, wrote she was stunned by the growing, quote, commodification and exploitation of Black Rock City and Burning Man, end quote. Sorry, it's just funny. Yeah, because you do need capitalism, even if you don't like it. But let's keep going. She said, quote, whether it's commercial photo shoots, product placement, or Instagram posts thanking friends for a useful item, attendees and fashion models and social media influencers are wearing and tagging brands in their photos, and they're using Black Rock City to increase their popularity to appeal to customers and sell more stuff, end quote. This is great. Let's keep going. So Goodell banned one camp that was known as Humano the Tribe, which according to Mashable, started out at $25,000 for a tent with a minibar and AC, but went all the way up to $100,000 plus for a village with 2 bedrooms, private bathroom, and air conditioners. That sounds very hippie, doesn't it? This is, yeah. Another note on this most amazing glamping area. Apparently, private chefs have raw and organic ingredients provided by local farms, even though there are no local farms in the Black Rock Desert because it's, well, a desert. There was even an electronic dance music aficionado DJ called Diplo, I think is how you pronounce it. I don't know. I don't care. Who one day, or one of the years, showed up in a plane that was branded in Popeyes with a whole bunch of Popeyes chicken. This is a real story, people. And came out with 2 bags full of Popeyes chicken and said, hey, Wendy's, it's your move. I thought I could make it through this story. Okay. So I gotta keep going. We're gonna make it here, people. We're gonna make it. I hope you can make it. There really is. I know I'm laughing, and I sort of apologize, but not really for laughing. There really is a point to this, so stick with me. It's gonna be good, and hopefully you're enjoying the ride. This the organizer also said some celebrities do get it. such as actress Susan Sarandon, who famously drank the ashes of psychologist and LSD advocate Timothy Leary when she attended in 2015. Oh gosh, I had to get that out. But hey, people, please don't drink other people's ashes, because gross. And what's wrong with you people? Anyway, okay. So this festival was moved from a bunch of hippies on the beach burning stuff and doing whatever they're doing to the desert, where they're also burning stuff and doing whatever it is they're doing with illegal substances and naked time things and pagan rituals and whatever. And now this is what we have. But here's what I want to point out where we are getting to, like, why this really matters. It says this began as a countercultural movement. And what I'd like to posit, what I'd like to propose to you today is, this is just not counterculture. This is just culture. This is just what it is. This is the reality of culture. It's a social media lifestyle. It's the live and let live. It's the live your truth. It's the do whatever you want to do with whoever you want to do it, whenever you want to do it lifestyle, just taken to the full extent of the degree. They go to this place where they feel like they can do whatever they want with whoever they want all the time and just be this weird communist hippie thing. But the weird thing about it is, apparently it's billionaires and social media influencers and a bunch of rich people. Maybe there's some less rich people there. I don't even know. There's 80,000 people there. But it's supposed to be this communist hippie gathering, and you came with nothing but a hammer and a 2x4 and made whatever you needed. And now a bunch of rich people just want to pretend that they are hippies and pay a crew of servants and chefs to do all the work for them. It's next level glamping, but it's even more than that. It's just creating this culture that you want to have around you that is the ultimate in excess, the ultimate in doing whatever you want to do with whoever you want to do it, whenever you want to do it. And it just rings like a modern Sodom and Gomorrah to me. But what we want to look at today is, what are the principles here? What can we learn here? What do we need to understand from this so that we can understand culture a little better? And I want to come back to a Chesterton quote that I've brought up many times because I think it's just so applicable to our life and our current culture. And he said it way, decades and decades ago, yet it's still true. And I mean, we looked at First Kings, which was thousands of years ago, and it's still true. But anyway, Chesterton said this: when men stop believing in God, they don't believe in nothing, they believe in anything. And I think that's really what we're seeing here. We're seeing this extent of believing in anything. They just do whatever they want. They do all of the things and pretend that there's no consequences to anything. They just live in this weird and wacky world and just pretend like they can do whatever they want because they don't want to believe in God, because God is too strict and restricting and terrible. So they just pretend that there's no God and they can do whatever they want, and they're just little beings floating through life and doing whatever they want to do. But the reality is there are consequences and there is real life, which we're going to see in a moment when we see what happened in this particular Burning Man. But to go a little bit deeper into this well, if you'll allow me and if you'll come with me, the Burning Man co-founder, Larry Harvey, wrote 10 principles in 2004 as guidelines for this whole thing. And if that sounds familiar, it's because in the Bible, there's 10 commandments, and he wrote 10 principles. And I think it's worth it for the next couple of minutes to go through these, because I think it shows us I was going to say hypocrisy, and yes, that's true, but it's just the disconnect that people really have, because they think they're going to run away from God and they're going to find this new paradise, this new utopia, and sometimes they make up their own rules. But the reality is they can't even follow the rules they make up, and we'll see that in a moment. And when we compare some of these principles that people invent versus the 10 Commandments and other laws and ideas that God has for us, and we compare how effective each of these is to real life, we might come to some good conclusions. A spoiler alert, I think the conclusions are pretty self-evident, but we'll get to that in a minute. So here are these 10 principles. Again, not 10 Commandments, because those are bad and authoritarian and they feel gross, apparently. You know, the commandments like don't kill, don't steal, don't want to steal, don't lie, don't have adulterous relationships, honor your father, your mother, these terrible, terrible commandments that the culture really, really hates, but I have to say, created the best societies in the history of the world. So this whole group of people that created a new city in the middle of the desert say those commandments are bad, but we have these other 10 commandments that totally make sense and aren't hypocritical at all, and we'll totally follow these way better than those dumb Christians follow their 10 rules or something like that. I may have added that last part in. So here's the 10 principles. First is radical inclusion. It says, anyone may be a part of Burning Man. We welcome and respect the stranger. No prerequisites exist for participation in our community. Now, I'm going to call you out on this. Is this true? If a radical Christian walked in carrying a Bible and saying, hey, you guys, repent and don't do all of this ridiculous stuff that you're planning on doing, I don't feel like I would be included. And I'm trying not to say certain things that they have there, but there happens to be one room that's a giant dome that apparently is just where they're all naked. Again, I'm feeling like if a preacher came in and said, I'm going to tell you why this is terrible and you should stop, you wouldn't be very included. But let's keep going. The next principle is gifting. Burning Man is devoted to acts of gift giving. The value of the gift is unconditional. Gifting doesn't contemplate a return or an exchange. Now, it doesn't seem like this is a real thing either. Why? Because if you receive and you never give, you're just a mooch, you're just a leech, I think society is definitely going to kick you out. Like, you can't live in a world like this. And we know that people, a lot of them at least, are kind of lazy and kind of moochy. So if you're there to just get stuff, I don't think the society is going to tolerate that, even though your principle says you should. But why? What's the fundamental principle beyond the principle? Why is this a thing? Only because you said it is. I think the actual real rule is clearly you give someone something, you expect them to give you something in return, which in the real world is called free trade, or in other more dangerous words, capitalism. Next principle is decommodification. Pretty sure they made that up. Decommodification. So they say, in order to preserve the spirit of gifting, our community seeks to create social environments that are unmediated by commercial sponsorships, transactions, or advertising. Now, I'm just going to point out the beginning of the story. I'll even show you the picture again. If you're just listening, you won't see this wonderful picture, but this is Diplo coming out of a Popeyes plane with Popeyes. Yeah, you kind of blew the not commercialization on that one. And social media, because apparently everybody does in this whole thing is social media. Yeah. And here's the thing, right? And the problem that we just keep coming to in our culture. Our culture says you need to, I talked about this the other day in some books that we were reading, and you can go listen to those, but you need to have this radical self-expression. You need to be able to be you be you, live your truth. It's all about you. It's all about the individual. It's all about who you are. It doesn't matter what anybody else is. And if you go to the end of that road, which literally is this Burning Man thing, this radical self-expression encourages the individual to do what they do. And you can't really get there from here. Like, if you do that, you're just going to run people over. It's this idea of radical self-expression, radical self-reliance. And then they talk about another one of their principles is radical self-expression. It says it arises from the unique gift of the individual. No one other than the individual or a collaborating group can determine its content. It's offered as a gift to others. In the spirit, the giver should respect the rights and liberties of the recipient. Now, that last part is important. If you respect the rights of others, that means you have to have something shared. I mean, this should be obvious, but I'll just help us understand if this is getting too intellectual. If I want to do something and you don't want me to do that thing, one of us loses. So we can't be fully radically self-focused and be together. That just doesn't work in real life. And we all know this. We know this with our kids. We know this on the playground. We know this on the road. If you've ever experienced road rage, you want to go faster. You want to go faster. Now everybody's angry and trying to crash into each other. Or here's maybe or more apropos example for this Burning Man example. What if I want to throw mud on you as an act of my self-expression, but you don't want me to pile mud on your face? Well, one of us doesn't get to do our radical self-expression. So which is it? Again, you can't even live up to your own principles. Next one is communal effort. Our community values creative cooperation and collaboration. We strive to produce, promote, and protect social networks, public spaces, works of art, and methods of communication that support such interaction. To which I say, works of art, huh? I mean, kind of thinking like Monet, Da Vinci, Bach, Beethoven, because that's what we see coming out of this, right? No? Yeah. Anyway, another principle. Civic responsibility. We value civil society. Community members who organize events should assume responsibility for welfare and endeavor to communicate civic responsibility to participants. They must also assume responsibility for conducting events with local, state, and federal laws. And that reminds me of something about illegal substances, but we'll keep going. Then leave no trace. Sorry, this one's funny to me. It says our community respects the environment. I won't even read this whole thing. Leave places in a better state than we found them. It only took me 5 seconds to find a ton of pictures of trash everywhere in the desert after these people. I mean, you've got 80,000 people. That's a nice value. I'm not saying you shouldn't pick up after yourself. I'm just saying the people that go to this don't. So you can't live up to your own principles. That's my point here. There's a couple more here. Just hang with me. We're almost there. Participation in our community is committed to a radically I can't even say it. Participatory ethic. We believe that transformative change, whether in the individual or society, can only occur through the medium of deeply personal participation. Everyone is invited to work. Everyone is invited to play. Okay, but what if you don't, right? Let's keep going. A couple more. Immediacy. Immediate experience is the most important touchstone in the value of our culture. We seek to overcome barriers that stand between us and blah, 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 blah. I'm skipping a bunch of things. Because here's the thing. That principle says basically that you're going to be present in the experience. What does taking a selfie do to being present in an experience? Because apparently all these people do the whole time is take selfies. And that's kind of the point here. Like, are you present in the experience or are you just taking selfies? What I want to do, again, is lay these against each other. You have these 10 principles that they invented for this Burning Man experience, and you have the 10 commandments. Respect your parents, don't commit adultery, don't commit murder, don't lie, don't covet things that aren't yours. These and the rest of the 10 commandments in the whole Judeo-Christian worldview created the most successful and long-lasting civilizations on Earth versus the 10 principles that lasted all of one rainstorm with 1/2 inch of rain. That's not 1.5, just a 1/2 inch of rain. Yep, the civilization was just over. So that's where we are. And let's just take a look at a little bit of what happened. Here is a video of this Burning Man experience after 1/2 of 1 inch of rain. If you're just listening and basically they're just showing a whole bunch of people walking through the mud,
is soaking wet
and people in the mud, and cars in the mud, and
but
bikes
here
in the mud,
is a double rainbow,
and a rainbow.
Look at that,
which is nice. We'll keep going. But here's what happened. Associated Press says an unusual late summer storm turned into a week-long countercultural fest into a sloppy mess with tens of thousands of partygoers stuck in foot-deep mud with no working toilets in the northern Nevada desert. That's a problem. Apparently, this is actually common. In 2018, they closed the entrances due to a dust storm, and it was canceled altogether during the shutdown. It was a 1/2 inch and maybe closer to 1 inch. Oh boy, fell. And so they basically closed the whole thing. They closed roads. They were supposed to burn this large wooden effigy. Again, the giant Burning Man. They were supposed to burn it and light it on fire, which is why I told that Elijah story, because doesn't it sound about the same? I don't know. Maybe it kind of sounds about the same. And then they basically all the burning, everything had to be postponed, and they all got shut in. There were weird things going on, saying like they had Ebola and stuff like that. It doesn't seem like any of that was true, but it just got weird. It got weird, and apparently the 1/2 inch of rain like destroyed their entire civilization in about 5 minutes. And then you had weird things like Chris Rock. Again, Are these regular people going to this? Maybe there are some, but you've got Chris Rock and this guy with the Popeyes thing. They had to be evacuated. Let's see if you're just listening. This one doesn't have any audio, but you just see the picture of these two guys because they had to walk and apparently walked about 6 miles in the mud and then were picked up in a pickup truck. Diplo said, I legit walked to the side of the road for hours with my thumb out and hiked about 6 miles. To which I'm just going to say, like, you know, I used to do a lot of hiking. I used to, I mean, 6 miles, that's not very far. Is it very far? They were posting things like they were almost not going to live, but it's just 6 miles. It's such a weird thing. I've got this video from CNN. Let's hear what this guy has to say.
It's still a little muddy, but a lot drier than it's been the last couple days. We got a little bit more rain last night, and that kind of just slicks things up. So people weren't going out so much last night. But we kept our bar open, and spirits are high, and we're still stocked. So we're good. We're good for probably Wednesday or Thursday.
Good to hear that spirits are high. What's been the most difficult aspect of this weather and being trapped there?
I would say the most difficult aspect, fundamental to this problem we have is the concept of a wook, someone who shows up to this event with nothing other than their RV and, their selfish indulgence, and they offer nothing. They offer nothing to this community. They don't add anything to this city. These are the people that are fleeing the city, leaving their trash, and creating a crisis from which Burning Man might not survive.
Yeah, and talk to me about that.
So, I mean, I think this is a funny clip because he basically says there's people there and they can't handle it. And then the whole thing, this whole 80,000 person city that they've built by hand and have these principles for is not going to survive a rainstorm. I think that's something to point out. It's something to really dig into and realize, like, yeah, people want to run away from God and they want to believe that they're creating this new paradise. And all it takes is half inch of rain and the whole thing is destroyed. And it might not survive or ever come back. And I think that's something we need to grab onto. I think it's something we need to understand from a biblical Christian worldview, that those people who are going to haters going to hate, right? They are just going to say, oh, the Bible's silly, it's old fashioned. But I'm going to come back to the point again where the best and longest lasting civilizations were based on biblical values. And that's not coincidental. It's because these provide the net of society that is necessary. Back to that countercultural thing. The cultural values at Burning Man are not countercultural. They are the mainstream views of the left, just taken to the nth degree. Those of us who are conservative, those of us who are Christian, don't want any of this. But this group of elites, you saw some of them driving around, they've removed themselves from the reality of the common man, and we see that in these stories every single day. And yet they don't want anything to do with us. They want to go to their parties in the desert with no consequences on their private jet and party like it's 1999. Then when they get a little bit of rain, they want the National Guard and FEMA resources to come in and save them. But this is not how America used to be. We used to share a belief system. Sure, there were rich and poor, but there were underlying beliefs that were there, these Christian values. Even John D. Rockefeller, one of the richest people in America at the time, went to church with normal people and sat with them on Sundays because the belief in God, the community were the same. This radical self-expression, this selfishness is destroying civilization. And the Burning Man is actually a really good metaphor of this. You construct an enormous man and then you, burn it down. Because why wouldn't you? Because what difference does it make? We're all just bags of chemicals just anyway, and you just realize that you have an infinite eternal value and you don't care. So you just don't care about your value. You don't care about eternity. You're just in it for that moment, and that's all you care about. So you just build it up and literally burn it down, and then you walk away. And this guy who's complaining, well, it may all be gone. It doesn't really matter because, like, I didn't care about it in the first place. That's the idea you get from some of this. Sure, they have their principles, but the principles don't last. The principles aren't eternal. The principles don't build civilizations because they just can't. On the other side, when you realize you actually have infinite eternal value as a child of God, and as part of a community, then you begin to move away from your self-worship into the care and nurture of those around you and the world around you. It's not a mistake that Jesus told you to deny yourself, to not be selfish, to be selfless. But this culture of self-worship is just self-destroying, just like the burning man. The meaning of your life creates value and direction. Without this meaning in your life, you become aimless and end up in the desert having pagan rituals, which are destroyed with just a few drops of rain. You know, there is an interesting side point as well that I think I should point out. That is, in this whole apparently amazing city that these burners have built, there are no children. And of course, you know, you say, well, yeah, it's obviously incredibly inappropriate for these children to be around all this hedonistic pagan lifestyle and all that entails. Sure. But the reality for literally everyone of this almost 80,000 people at this event, they don't care about the future. They're living for this time. They're living for right now, man. Hakuna Matata, right? Why would you need to worry about the future of society at large? Just have your fun right now, live your truth, you be you, and maybe buy a baby from some other mother's womb later. That's all the rage in Hollywood, right? No, there are no kids because radical self-expression and self-worship has no room for children. Children are just a burden to these selfish people, and that's really sad. But this is, again, why they build this whole dramatic, elaborate thing in the desert that they will literally burn down when they're done, and it means nothing. It's just nihilism, to use that word. It's nothingness. Solomon might have something to say about this in his book, Ecclesiastes, if you want another fun read. Now, I think this is a good example of where the heart and culture currently lies. It gives a clear picture of what not to do. But I don't want to end there because I don't think we have to end there. And in fact, I'm not disheartened by this whole thing. In fact, I think it gives us a great example to not be like. I learned a long time ago that there's a couple things you can learn from everybody. You can learn what to be like, and you can learn what not to be like. And that's really important. And it's really something we can grow into. You can decide, hey, do I want to be like this? Or, whoa, I don't want to be like that. And you can always learn and you can always grow from every situation. So we can grow from this situation and we can learn what to be like. We can learn that we need to teach our families. We need to grow our families. We need to have children and build our families and teach our kids and raise them up in the Lord. We can teach them right from wrong and teach them not just how to live with other people, but as our Lord teaches, how to love one another too. So let's leave it there for today. I think this is an interesting story. I hope you did too. For Church Public, I'm Matt Odegaard. And as always, keep the faith.